Hello there, welcome to my YouTube channel, Truth and Motion Studios, but now I call it Unpack Cultage. Here I share thoughts on spiritual abuse experiences and healing from it, and if you will, kind of maybe detoxifying your faith. So today I'd like to discuss with you, unpack getting triggered at church. A lot of people, when they leave cults or unhealthy groups, they think they need to continue to go to some kind of church. They just have to, otherwise they're not okay with God. That they just think it's a requirement of a Christian to be part of a Christian community, or they just really value community with people of the faith, and so they keep looking. But then they often share this recognition, this observation of themselves, that they try to go to other places, but it's very triggering for them. They have maybe even panic attacks, anxiety attacks. They feel very uncomfortable and they need to leave. And often then they're saying, I don't know what's wrong with me. Why can't I stay in this place? Like, I'm supposed to be there, and it's just so upsetting. Well, here's my first thought. Can you point at what it exactly is that is triggering you? What was it? Was it being greeted at the entry, kind of like making you feel like, oh no, if I want to leave early, someone's gonna give me a look? Like, is that it? That you really didn't feel free to leave as you please? Or was it all just, this love bombing where you kind of like, oh man, everybody was so interested in me and so friendly and just shaking hands all over again, that you were just like, this is just like fake. I've learned to not trust this friendliness, this supercharged welcome. Was it the new member or whatever cards that get in contact, leave your information here so we can reach out to you? Or was it something that's kind of a pet peeve for me too, the worship? Was it the God requires us to worship him, and now, sing with us, like, and then people are standing and some people are raising their hands, and then it's like, ugh, it's uncomfortable, and it makes you feel like, oh no, I'm not spiritual enough because I don't enjoy this, or the music reminds me of getting abused by my people. So many different ways that we can get triggered. And I haven't even gotten to the message yet, and the offering, the money, when they ask you to put money into their bucket and everybody's watching. So is it maybe what was said in the sermon? Were you going to a place actually hoping to hear some good news, and then what you experienced was guilt? Was you being told that you're not doing enough for God, that you're not holy enough by the standards that this church has? Was it that you're not asking for forgiveness for things that you should feel guilty about, but you're actually not feeling guilty for them? A million reasons why you could get triggered in a church. For me, I didn't go to church for a really long time. What I did when I came here to the US first was just kind of hang around the spiritual community. At that time, there was a lot more city-wide events, so I didn't actually have to go into any specific church on a Sunday morning. It was more like a Thursday night community Bible study at a library or at some place of business. So it was really much more comfortable for me. And at that time, I really still subscribed to that charismatic evangelical theology. So really, I wasn't triggered. There's that one vlog where I talk more about how actually that community was huge, was a big impact in a positive way for me. Now I wouldn't be able to go into those churches anymore because my faith has changed so drastically that I think it would be a waste of everybody's time. And then a lot of the pain that I have ever since experienced in churches where I try to serve, be it the women's ministry or something, those clashes happen because of theology differences, severe differences in what I believe God is like and what other people think God is like. Like, for instance, when the pandemic hit and the women's team that I was with at the time suggested that some Bible verses saying that this comes from God. And then I pushed back. It's like, oh, what? I think God is our hope. God is not our punisher. If anything, we did this to ourselves. And now, let's speak of hope in this case, and then come together virtually in whatever form we can. But that ultimately set something in motion where I was again asked to leave because I didn't fit anymore. And so I needed to learn that my theology is potentially not, fitting with some places. And then is it up to me to try to change them or challenge them? Or is it up to me to then be like, okay, I guess I really don't fit here. So yeah, that I don't have an answer for you. I don't have an answer for myself. I just kind of go where the door is open, I guess. So right now I'm actually part of some kind of a Lutheran, very moderate community. And the main reason was how I ended up there, that I interviewed Baxter Kruger, who's a theologian from Mississippi. And I really appreciate his theology and his take of church as a thing we do, but that's not what Jesus was talking about. Like, the fellowship of believers is just a reality. We are like you're in church when you realize that God is right there with you, and that God is right there with other people too. It kind of, God is everywhere, right? Isn't that good news? Yeah. So that's church. But we still apparently need to go through this motion and have that building. And so I ended up interviewing, because he put me in this, Baxter Kruger put me in touch with people from this guy's church, who I by now have interviewed, Ryan Braley. I have a couple interviews with him. And I think he's a good guy. That's why I'm at that church. And that's why I ended up bringing my kid to Sunday school, which Tim Moritz is one of his former professors from Bethel, who I also interviewed. So there was just a lot of connections that kind of led in that direction. Also, I was at a funeral when I was pregnant with my kid, who's now 3. So over 3 years ago, where Ryan was a speaker at that funeral. And back then I was thinking, wow, I wonder if that guy believes in what I call the beautiful gospel, that Jesus's message was that we're all loved, not a few, or not you are loved in spite of how awful you are, or you're not just loved because God takes pity upon you. No, you're loved because you're God's. God created you. Do you love your children only because they earn it, or they don't deserve your love? Because what? I think that idea that God only takes pity upon you and loves you that way is so toxic that in itself is, to me, that what will set you up for spiritual abuse. If you believe you need to earn God's love, then to me, that's the setup for spiritual toxicity that often leads to a lot of pain connected to spirituality. Well, so when you're triggered at church, what are you supposed to do? I was recently triggered in that church, and I'm not a member. I don't plan to become a member anytime soon. I just kind of hang out, and I go to the services. I help in the Sunday school now every once in a while, and I'm dipping my toe into the church. I have been bringing up things, and I was positively surprised by the responses that I got. So what triggering to me looks like is that I'm going there expecting to hear good news. If I then hear legalism, like, oh, if you don't live by this Bible verse from the Old Testament, then that's maybe why your life is not going so good. I'm sorry, that's legalism. So I'm triggered by a lot of music that makes God look like some kind of a triumphant warrior that is gonna shred my enemies, and that all that language like I've been a soldier for Jesus, okay? And I'm telling you, there's nothing there. There's nothing good there to go back to. And Jesus did not talk about needing soldiers. He didn't talk about fighting battles. He spoke about a wedding feast and sheep and shepherds and people in vulnerable places experiencing love and kindness, and that in this world we have trouble, but to be of good cheer because Jesus has overcome the world. So it was really Paul, the apostle, who was raised in Rome and probably knew of gladiators and all that stuff. And then soldiers had a very different relationship to how the good news hit him and how he spoke about good news stuff related. And so to me, there's no good news in bringing up any kind of war language. I don't think it helps our human soul at all to think of God as fighting our battles against our enemies. Like, what the heck? We're supposed to love our enemies. So you see, that's like gaslighting. On the one hand, we're told to love our enemies, but with the other hand, we're told that God is killing our enemies, like fighting our battles. What? That's supposed to be mostly a metaphor for like, you're worried. Okay, God will take care of your stuff. Well, that's a very different way of talking about it than saying, you know, your enemies, God will tear them to shreds. To me, that's not worship. To me, worship is how much I love the person that I like least. That's worship. But that's just me. And that's not something to make me feel guilty. That's just something to keep me in my place. I'm not better than anyone, but I'm also not worse than anyone, just like everybody else. Beloved by God. So when I bring up stuff, when I feel like I've heard legalism, yes, I'm that person that will write a text message or go directly to the preacher and be like, did I just hear that right? And this is what I would recommend you guys to do. Bring it up and then see what happens. If you are being made the problem, then, you know, that's probably not the right place for you. Really, it's not, because take all these little experiences seriously. How are you being treated? Are these people trauma informed? And a lot of people are not. What is trauma informed? Trauma informed means that you recognize that people have been so hurt, so wounded, so scared and scarred by their life's experiences with people. You can either damage them further, which means they will put up a bigger armor. Brene Brown here, I'm talking Brene Brown terminology. They will just guard themselves, their hearts so much more, and show up less authentic, even pretend to be someone better or whatever, but they will not show up in their authentic selves. That's really, if you're not trauma informed, you don't have that care, the sensitivity, the respect, the boundaries, that you're dealing with a real human being that brings a huge, complex background story that is very real to them and you know nothing about. So to treat people with basic care, that's just it. So a lot of people are uninformed about that, and a lot of organizations are uninformed about that. So I would not recommend anyone hang out around people who are not trauma informed, or keep them at a really long distance. So as long as I still believed that I needed to be part of a faith community where a person that was spiritually mature than me told me what to do, gave me that absolution, you know, that you're okay with God because XYZ you're doing. As long as I still believe that, that's as long as I was very vulnerable to spiritual abuse and to stick out toxic situations. So today is kind of an anniversary. 15 years ago, I came back from my trip to Minnesota for the first time, where my husband and I, back in the day, we were, of course, not married then, where we fell in love. And when I came home on October 2nd, 2007, I was a different person. There's many layers to the story. What I would like to point out, number one, is that was I had experienced good news. The good news were that I was loved, and I loved someone, and it like, whoa, the same person that I love loves me back just for being me. And I feel like James saw me so clearly. He saw my extreme vulnerability of wanting to earn God's favor, wanting to keep that grace that I was given. And he loved me anyway. And yet I was still so much in need of someone to tell me that, well, that was my weakness, that I needed someone to tell me that I was okay with God. And when I came home with all these wonderful, you know, I was so changed. My parents noticed right away. They picked me up at the airport. The call leader calls me in the middle of the night. It was really late. I was exhausted after a day of travel, and tells me I can never go back to the US. And I'm talking about more in detail in other vlogs. Had I had the ability to hold my newfound good news that I'm loved against that, then I would have been like, oh, I'm sorry, this is just really not good. You know, what you're doing here right now, you're assuming that I need someone to tell me what to do, but I don't think that's healthy. And so no, thank you to this. Thanks for sharing, but no, thank you. But I wasn't there. I still believe that God loves me because I'm doing the faith the right way, which includes obeying a spiritual leader. And as I say it again, as long as I believe that, I was vulnerable for spiritual abuse. And it comes in small, tiny little things like, if you don't read your Bible, like at least 10 minutes every day, who are you really, like, in the kingdom? It's that little, and you will pick that up, that in churches things like that are being said. Or if you don't listen to Christian music in the car, but you're listening to this and that, you're really not like, are you really? I don't know. And every church has their stuff that the legalism, you know, the yeast that Jesus says that just a very little bit has a huge impact. So as long as you, big or small, hold on to legalism, you are vulnerable to getting abused. And then I think you have your body, you have a physical reaction to that. It's like, here too? So you've left that other thing, or you were kicked out, and now you're looking kind of for the same thing still, to have someone tell you you're okay with God. But when you get the sense, in whatever it is, spoken or unspoken messages, that you're not okay with God, but you came with the hope that in this place you could feel good. Someone could tell you you're okay with God, but they're not telling you that. That's very upsetting. And I don't know if that's why you are getting triggered at church, but to me, that is a huge thing. And talking with a lot of people, I feel like this has been kind of the nail on the head, that they went to that new group, that new church, that new movement, small, big, whatever shapes and sizes. But the experience is that, again, they're being burdened with stuff when they thought they came to experience good news. So just like I had a panic attack that night when my cult leader told me I wasn't allowed to go. This is 15 years ago. And I remember that night as one of the worst nights of my life, because it just was it was cognitive dissonance at its greatest. It was this, I had just been blessed by God, a really wonderful 7 weeks with like the outcome, or the outlook that I will go back and I will live in the US and all that, be around people that get me, and be around like just good stuff for myself and then for the kingdom or whatever. But then coming back and being told that was not God. You feel like that was God, but it was actually yourself, and you can never go back. That wasn't God. That just, so I wonder if that kind of trigger, if like a similar dissonance happens when you go into a place and then you're like, I came with the hope to experience something freer, something better. And then you actually feel the yeast again. You feel the package again being put on your shoulders. And honestly, I don't know if there's a church who's not going to do that. I really don't think it's possible. There's so many people that are given the mic. There's so many people who speak in a church. You just never save anywhere from legalism. But what you can do is reflect on your own faith. Are you loved because God made you? Or are you loved because XYZ? To me, that's the good news. We are loved because God made us. That's it. And the sooner you pitch your tent there, the sooner you stay in that place. And you can say, I don't need anyone to tell me I'm okay with God. Jesus told me I'm okay with God. The sooner you can stay there, I think this need, this religious addiction, in my case, it was certainly religious addiction, will lose its power over you, because you don't need people to tell you that you're okay with God anymore. You know that in your heart. And then you can go and appreciate the community in its flaws, with its flaws. I will not be part of a church where from the pulpit there's just constant legalism being preached. I'm going to this church because the pastor and I generally jive. I recognize that he's trying to walk a fine line and pleasing a lot of people on a religious spectrum. So I respect that. But what the reason why I'm staying is that when I've brought up problems, I've been treated very respectfully. When you said that this thing about the Old Testament law and how that kind of still talks to us today, like, can we consider that that's really triggering? So I will continue to do that. And I know that that will have an impact down the road. But if they were saying to me, are you crazy? Like, who are you to question us? Go back into the pew where you belong, or just leave this church or whatever, then, well, I would know this is not good, right? So I feel like as long as I'm being respectfully heard, that's a place where I can hang out and see what happens. So you are more than welcome to share in the comments what has been triggering to you and how you have handled it. I am not expecting people to go back to church. There's people who are not looking for a new church at all, and they are just done, and I get that too. So you got to do what you have to do. I just hope that you take the time to reflect on your actual beliefs about God, and maybe there's some detoxifying that needs to happen, because to me, unpacking our theology and realizing what spiritual abuse is, that goes hand in hand. All right, be best abundantly.